What's going on, guys? Jared here. This is Run with Toby. I'm here with Andrew. This is episode 12. Let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, what's going on, Andrew?
Not much, man. Welcome to April, the second week of April.
Second week, second podcast. We're kind of, I guess, getting into the middle of April soon here in like a few days. So yeah, man, how's the last couple of weeks been treating you?
Well, not to sound like too much of a downer, but it's been a pretty rough past couple of weeks. It's been, the client work is piled up, and for anyone who's in a client service business, client work doesn't always go according to plan. So we've definitely been through a couple of instances where things haven't gone to plan over the past couple of weeks. So it's been, pretty busy and somewhat stress-filled past couple of weeks, but, kind of comes with the territory.
Yeah. I think that's any client relation business. It doesn't matter if it's digital work or if you're, cleaning toilets or mowing grass or whatever it is, right? The client's always right.
Exactly.
And there's
always a curveball.
Yeah.
And the client's always right, even when they're throwing you a curveball. So
Exactly. Yep. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and jump into what has caught your attention lately. What's been out there in the ether catching your eye?
Yeah, so I saw an email from Capital One. They sent me an email about this thing they called Eno, E-N-O. And so I opened the email, and basically Eno is Capital One's sort of like digital assistant. And basically what it is, it's a text message based kind of chat bot. So, we've talked before about using Facebook Messenger, I think WhatsApp and a couple of other messaging tools to basically build like a smart chat bot.
Yep.
Right. And a lot of brands and companies have been using these sort of instant messaging tools as sort of another way to engage with their customers, to provide a better customer experience, to provide better customer service. And I thought this was an interesting thing because Eno is actually an intelligent assistant. That's what Capital One brands it as, but it's all text message based. And it got me thinking to say, text message is something that people still use pretty often, right? Although it's kind of morphed into WhatsApp, it's kind of morphed into iMessage, kind of the proprietary messaging platforms on, Apple or Google or whatever. But, the typical send someone a green bubble message if you're an iPhone user, right?
Blue.
Yeah, or blue. seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit in terms of like brands using them. And so I kind of thought about it and I was like, why don't brands use text messaging more? If you can get someone to opt in, and the funnel that kind of Capital One built to get you to opt in to this text messaging tool was a little deceitful, but also a really clean funnel to get a really quick conversion. So basically, they send you an email, they describe what Eno is, it's a digital assistant, and then they ask you to click on a button that says find out more. And then when you click on the button, when it says find out more, it immediately opts you in to their entire Eno kind of workflow because Capital One already has your phone number, right?
Right.
So they use that phone number. And they kind of, I read the disclaimer at the bottom that I didn't read when I clicked on it the first time and realized that it says that by clicking on this button, you actually opt in to use the Eno. So immediately when I click on that button, I get a text message right away. Text message says, hey, thanks for, finding out about Eno. Here's what it is. It gives you a nice little description of it. It gives you a link to opt out if you want to opt out right away. And I thought it was a really cool kind of clean way to get someone into and engaged with some data that Capital One already has. I've always thought about text messaging as kind of being like a really spammy way to engage with your customers. But I realized I realized it was because I used to get all these like text message like messages from promoters
Right.
like on their Friday night being like, hey, I got 4 tables available, buy 2 bottles of Bellevue or whatever, right? Or opt into my guest list or whatever. And I never opted into any of these lists. And so when you don't opt in to a text message based list, it's super effing intrusive,
Right.
right? You're like, what is this thing, right? It's like, it's a total spammy message. But if you opt into it, it's a great way to communicate with people,
On a one-on-one
on a
type.
one-on-one basis. So it got me thinking actually from our last guest or 2 guests ago, Kelly from Pedal Fox, who they're actually building a text messaging based app to like engage with their customers.
Yep.
And they're trying to find ways to get people to opt into that list and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of had 2 takeaways. Number one, that customer service through chatbots is absolutely the future. People offshore customer service and whatnot, but if you can do it all through text message or through a messenger or whatever, that's great. The second thing is I think text message is also a vastly underutilized method of communication and marketing. That if you can get people to opt in, that it's actually a really great tool to engage with your customers. So
that's cool. A few things going back. One, I remember the promotion thing. In fact, when I first started DJing, before I knew how to properly use an email list, I went around and just like spam messaged all the phone numbers in my contact book. And I would actually get my friends to give me their numbers, and they would actually
nice.
they'd write them all down on a piece of paper. I didn't know who it was.
Well done.
But I would let them know.
That's the hustle, man.
Yeah, I'd let them know where I was playing, if there was a drink special or, a cover charge special or whatever, say my name at the door, that type of thing. But I wasn't coming from the promoter side. I was coming from the artist side, trying to get people to come out to my gigs. So yeah, I do definitely remember that. And the second thing is, it's funny you say that you came across this intelligent assistant. I've been using, in fact, if customer service is available through a chatbot on a website, 99% out of the time, I will go to that way before I even email or call, because it's instant gratification knowing that you may get an answer right then. And usually, for the most part, you do get an answer right away, even if it's AI giving you an answer. Just the fact that you get a response is worth it.
Chalk it up to me being a millennial, but anytime I have to like call someone, I'm like, oh
yeah, it's
I gotta call this. I gotta work through this damn phone tree. God forbid if I end up getting routed to the wrong damn person, I've got to go through that whole thing again. Like, yeah, phone is just, I don't know what it is about phone and customer service, but.
Well, a lot of companies now, and I think, I want to say Discover is promoting pretty hard that you get stateside assistance in your local area, so that you're talking to somebody that, you don't have to go through a language barrier or somebody that may not understand what you're, trying to explain to them. So they're pushing pretty hard that all their customer service is now stateside, which is funny, right? Because it was like a big thing, like, oh, let's outsource it, push it overseas, because we can have customer service 24 hours a day.
Yeah, the guy who's clearly from India or somewhere else, whose name is Bob.
I always think about if you've ever seen that movie, if anybody out there has ever seen the movie Horrible Bosses.
Oh my god!
When they're when they're in the car and the virtual assistant or the SOS assistant that comes with the car, his name is he calls himself Gregory, but then the guys are like, no, tell us your real name. Come on, tell us your real name. And he says it, and they're just like, yeah, we'll stick with Greg.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's cool, man. I think the way phone has been kind of done, it's funny because for customer service, it's almost like the younger, and I'm only speaking for maybe millennials and other generations or younger generations, but nobody wants to engage with customer service reps on the phone. I know that's kind of like maybe what my parents were used to.
Right.
Like, you got to
my dad loves screaming at people on the other end.
I guess so, man. It's just stressful, right? But
it is.
But again, like, I think finding other ways to engage with your customers is it's difficult to find the right way to do it. And I think ultimately, when you look at all this technology and all these ways of reaching people now, it's like, how do you, again, engage in that one-to-one kind of interaction? And using the data that Capital One already has, your phone number, and I guess they're assuming that your mobile number is that number you put in there is a good mobile number.
Yeah. That's a good assumption.
Yeah, I'm actually, now that I think about it, I think they actually parse out like home phone, mobile phone.
Yeah, even when it says home, I always put my mobile. I've never had a landline.
Yeah, but
since
I'm
I
curious.
left my parents' house.
I'm curious to see how many people probably opted in to this campaign. But for any email marketers out there, just and I actually took some screenshots of the email and we'll upload those in the show notes. But for any email marketers out there, it was literally a one-click kind of slightly tricky kind of opt-in, but the call to action on the button was just generic enough that I didn't realize that I was actually opting in. So hats off to whoever in the email marketing department at Capital One who came up with that campaign, because you got me. So
right.
What about yourself, man? What have you been looking at?
Well, one last thing. Sorry, and I know we're dragging this on. It's funny again that you say you found this, because in the same time frame I found or I got hit up somehow by Gary V's chatbot. So he's developed this thing called First in Line, and it's very similar to exactly what you just said. It's opt in through either a text message to an AI bot or through Facebook Messenger to an AI bot, and it puts you to what he's calling First in Line, and you get exclusive time frames on releases for like his books or his shoes now. It's crazy.
It's another way for him to promote his content.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But now what he's doing, he's basically saying, if you opt into this now, you're quote unquote first in line. You're an early adopter to this technology or this platform that he's using. So he's doing like giveaways. He's like, I can't obviously give everything away on Twitter all the time. So he's like, this is a way for me to one-on-one type conversation, with you or whatever. And I believe if you text the Facebook Messenger bot, you'll actually get some pretty decent AI responses. So this thing is real. It's coming. It's coming more than just like customer service, like you're.
Yeah, and that kind of aligns with this whole brand, which is he's about experimenting and trying new things first. Being first in line to do those things. That's cool.
Yeah. So we'll link all that up in the show notes, guys. I know that was a lot of info there, but very cool stuff on the horizon as far as like AI intelligence and chatbots. So for mine, it's definitely not as involved, but this new thing, and I don't even know how much of a new thing it is. It's kind of been like an age old thing, but where, you're using like a jingle with advertising or whatever, but this new emergence of quote unquote copy rappers has come up.
Wait, copy rap, like
rap music, like hip hop, copy rappers. Basically, it's copywriters writing lyrics to in the form of like rap style beats and rapping them over. And these are called they're called copy rappers, and the ads are ad raps, I believe is what they're called, what they're being called out there on the internet. I stumbled across this one guy who wrote and pitched this video of him. Basically, he wrote copy for a Sprite ad in the form of a rap song. And it's kind of cool. It actually it doesn't sound corny like you would think, stuff like this. It's not the 90s corny type rap. It sounds like you could play it on the radio minus what it's saying. So it sounds pretty native to the genre and native to the culture. But it's just amazing copy written in the form of these lyrics to a Sprite ad. And the whole idea was he made this as a pitch so that he could get a job to work on the Sprite campaign. So he actually didn't have the job, but he wanted to work on it so bad that he went out and did this. And it's hilarious. We'll definitely link it up in the show notes, guys. It's really funny. And I have a couple other examples. But these guys are super clever. If you're a copywriter out there, jump on this, go find somebody with a camera, get some small production team and put something together.
So how many people are actually putting content on this thing?
It's just one guy.
Oh, it's one guy.
It's just
not like a marketplace.
No.
Like
this is just one guy. He went out. And I don't know how much he had in his production team. It's well produced.
Cool. Okay.
So it's a video. It's him basically flying through different, or not flying literally, but him going through different environments. He's wearing like a Sprite necklace. It's got like a lemon and a lime on it, and the copy's amazing. I can't recite it because I don't remember it, but two, I couldn't do it justice. So we'll just leave it to the video and we'll link it in the show notes.
Do you know if he got the job? Or?
He did. So he ended up landing the job because of this pitch. So it worked.
Awesome.
And he ended up working at this agency called W&K. It's a big ad agency. They hired him to be a creative.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, it's so cool now. And I think we talked about this on a previous podcast with one of our guests, but like now it's almost like you have all these tools now where you can create, instead of giving someone your resume,
Right.
Saying, I did this, I did that, I did that. You can actually create something kind of on the fly to show what you can actually do.
Yeah, actually.
And that becomes like a live portfolio or a live resume or something like that specific to that job, which if I were looking for someone did that for me, I'd be like, all right, you got it. you know, right?
Yeah. Going back to that podcast, Sam, when we talked to Sam,
I think that was it,
for
right?
Weird Work,
Yeah.
his audition to get to be the Weird Work podcast host was, let me interview somebody and send it in as a demo. And yeah, I mean, exactly what you're saying. It's better than a resume. It shows your passion, shows your creativity, and you just have a lot more options to do, you know, and it doesn't have to be blockbuster quality content. It just needs to be good. If you have a good idea, it's usually it's less execution and more about the idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. Well, all right. So let's move on. So let's go to the new tool or app or software that has been kind of catching your attention.
Yeah, so I've been using this more this I guess SaaS tool a little bit more recently, and it's a tool called Envision. INVISION. We'll put it in. We'll put the link in the show notes. But it's basically like a design tool, which makes it super easy for you to mock up things like emails and landing pages and web pages. It's something where it's like a little more. It looks a little bit better than a wireframe. You know, when you think of
you're talking about mocking up like UX UI type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So like when you look at a wireframe, it's just boxes and X's and
literally
O's and
wires
things.
on a white page,
right? But it's not like a full dev, like you've coded anything. It's literally like just like graphically what the thing should look like on the front end. Right. So we've been using this tool with one of our clients to mock up. We've had to test like 9 different versions of email copy, but before we can get the email copy approved through one of our partners, we have to show them what the design looks like. But rather than get the whole dev team spun up to design these emails and to build them all,
waste a bunch of time.
And potentially waste a bunch of time because the client could say, no, that box can't go there, which means you have to change the box 9 other times. You mock it up inside Envision. It actually shows you what it will look like to the end user when they open the email. You can actually like click on buttons.
Functionality.
Take you to the next screen. So it's kind of like it's a really great tool for those who need to do anything kind of visual design focused and that need to get things in front of a client or a partner for approval that requires design approval. And also it gives you a much better idea of like what the look and feel of things look like before you actually send it off to your dev team. So it gives people a little bit more context on things. It gives people a better idea of what it'll look like without having to invest tons of development dollars and time.
Kind of test it out as well.
Yeah, totally. So like, let's say, like you have a landing page mocked up and you want to get some feedback from folks before you send it to dev. You maybe mock up 2 or 3 versions of the landing page through Envision. You can show it to like a test group, see what they think about it, get their feedback. You can actually comment directly.
Like a red or green button type deal, like on a cart, that kind of old school checkout.
Exactly. Which one do you like better?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because if you ask someone like, hey, if I put a red or a green button on a landing page, which one do you rather click on? They got it. No one knows until they see it. This gives them an opportunity to see it without sending it off to get it coded. So it's been it's a cool tool. I'm sure that all the UI UX folks out there probably have tons of tools out there like that. But this is the first time that I've used it really in depth and very heavily, because we had like probably 9 different emails, probably 6 to 8 different landing pages that we had to, configure and test. So Envision, it's a really cool tool. And for anyone out there doing any kind of marketing, it's a really good one. So
I didn't use Envision. I ended up going with something else. But a couple of years ago, we worked on a project for a company developing an app, We used a similar program. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but you can, inside of InVision, I believe you can also do app mockups.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a big thing. At least I think that's where
Yeah.
they may have even started. Like that was their first original version of what InVision was about. Adobe has one similar. It's called UX UI
is it
or
really?
Adobe UX, something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll link it up in the show notes. But it's
Cool.
it's Adobe's like native mock-up type software like that, which it works with the entire Adobe suite, which is cool. So you can flow files in and out very seamlessly. But yeah, that's cool.
And the bigger picture for anyone out there is like, it's not just about copy. Like you can have the most, like we talked about Warby's, RB Parker and Warby's on our last podcast, who had a crack shot copywriter. But so it's not just about writing amazing copy, but if you have really shitty design, really poor design, that copy doesn't mean anything.
And vice versa.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's this blend of kind of design and copy that is what gets, people to raise their click-through rate by, 100, of 1% or 2% or 3% or whatever. And when you're doing that over hundreds of thousands of email addresses, that starts to add up.
Right.
Right. So
totally
optimizing the design is just as important as optimizing the copy. So what about you? What kind of tools have you been into?
Mine kind of goes right along the lines. You're talking about the design side of it. I'll talk about the copy side of it. I've been using this app in my personal uses mainly called Grammarly. It's a plugin that you can plug into Chrome. They have a web-based version, and they have I believe an iOS version, but I know they have a Mac OS version. And it's exactly what it says. It checks your grammar. It's like spell check on steroids. But for somebody like myself who sucks at spelling, grammar, like I was never the spelling bee kid. I was never the bookworm.
We're not putting on you in any of our copy.
No.
So you can stay in Photoshop.
Not. Nope. I'm definitely 2018 text message copy guy. That's text message bro. That's what my copy would sound like or look like. But no, Grammarly helps me just kind of not sound like an idiot when I'm drafting an email or if I'm putting something up on our social media. Either my personal or the Tobe social media. I drop it in there first. Let it kind of do its thing. It tells me if I have any mistakes in grammar. So it scans the entire internet for proper grammar, proper use, things like that, and it kind of kicks you back and corrects all those mistakes. There is a paid version. I'm using the free version currently, but the paid version is like for somebody I would say who's a heavy blog writer, an author, somebody who writes a lot of copy, maybe somebody who a student who's writing big turn papers to use it. And use the paid version because it's got some deep grammar corrections that it can go into.
Yeah, there's another app out there called Hemingway. It's similar, very similar to this. The reason I know about it is because I write a lot of blog content, and Hemingway is, I think, similar to the paid version of Grammarly, where I can dump in like literally a blog post and it'll just call out grammar sucks here, or passive voice here, or all these things. Fix this.
It's pretty amazing.
Fix this. It's awesome. It's like taking the whole spell check, grammar check from Word or Google Docs or whatever, just
from all of history.
Yeah, and dude, I mean, it's like it really. I think at least with Hemingway, they kind of try to position it as like kind of your own personal editor.
They kind of do that for this as well.
Yeah, and with the amount of content that people have to put out these days, sometimes you just want to focus on the idea for the content and not so much on the style of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the punctuation.
222. There.
Yeah.
Here.
Exactly. What contraction? Do I use an apostrophe? No. Like possessive? Yeah. All that crap.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Just like always, guys, we'll go ahead and link everything up in the show notes so you can check it later at your leisure. Also, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and tell a friend about the podcast. And you can follow us on social at Run with Tobe. Hey guys, I just want to take a few seconds real quick to tell you what we do here at Tobe Agency. We are a full stack marketing agency. From strategy and execution to concepting and building creative media, we can do it all. If you think we might be a good fit for you and your company, drop us a line, info@tobeagency.co. All right, Andrew, so that's going to take us to the main section of today's podcast. It's something that I've been kind of wanting to talk about. It's something we kind of just talk about every day, and I guess we maybe take it a little bit for granted. But let's just talk about the tools and some of the processes that we use to keep ourselves in check in the agency. Obviously, we are big on technology. We talk about it here all the time on the podcast. But I think in general, just fundamentally, we both believe that if technology can make things more efficient, we will find a way to implement it and use it. And I kind of just want to give everybody outside of the either an agency experience or maybe they are in another agency, just like a little insight on what we do for our day to day, week to week, month to month, project to project. How important is it to find proper like project management tools?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm when you talk about like trying to build a business, right? And I think you're trying to build any business, no matter if you're building an agency, you're building a technology company, you're building a more retail consumer facing business. You've got to have some sort of scalable project management in place. It's literally as simple as knowing like what work is in the pipeline in one place and knowing who's responsible for it and when that effing thing is due, right? And sending you some sort of warning or sending you some sort of notification that, hey, look, you got this task on your plate and it's coming up. I mean, at the very, very, very most basic part of it, I mean, that's what the project management tool should be used for, right?
Yep.
And it shocks me sometimes to see like, hey, everyone has a system and their system works, right? Regardless if it's super organized or if it's organized chaos, it works. But the question is, how do you build a scalable system, right? How do you build a system that stays as efficient or maybe gets even more efficient as the business starts to grow, as more people come into it, as more tasks get put into it, you have more clients, more customers, all that kind of stuff. So I think one of our very first podcasts, we had Kaylin, who kind of runs our operations and, has, gets involved in a lot of our tools and technology. We went through a lot of like back and forth on, we used lots of project management tools. And we went from probably the most complicated to probably one of the most simple ones, right? And us being a relatively young agency, I kind of came to the conclusion that, look, we want to build for the future. We want to build for when we're going to have 100 people in this agency and, we've got, 100 clients or whatever the case is, right? And when we started building the project management tool, we actually thought, hey, look, that's what we got to build this tool for where we think we're going to go.
Right.
The reality of it was that tool is just way too complicated for our workflow because we haven't even really truly defined our workflow yet, right? So it's important to know like kind of where you are in the life cycle of your business and to know that, hey, there's going to be a lot of things that are potentially going to change in terms of process, in terms of workflow, in terms of all those things, and that the tool that you select should be relatively easy to make changes when that workflow or that process changes because things always change when you're a relatively young company, young business.
Right.
So to me, it's important to have a project. I think most business owners have some sort of project management system in place. The key is how do you make that scalable, but also keep in mind like where you are today, right? How do you make it work for what you got today?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've worked at some very large studios where we had some of the most complex project management tools that you could think of. You could customize every feature. You could have personal notifications. It's, the list goes on and on and on. And even going into that, where that particular piece of software was managing thousands of artists, it was still relatively complex and kind of hard to get into when you're first kind of getting onboarded.
Was it just more the UI? Was it the way the workflow worked?
Yeah.
Like, what specifically about it?
I would say, and this probably happens with a lot of software in general, but a lot of project management tools, developers don't often, they're not in the situation that you may be in using the software, and they're possibly engineering it for the way that they work in their workflow. And that doesn't always translate across the board, right? So I think one of the challenges that we found was finding something that could be simple enough for somebody who's possibly never used project management software to somebody who's a seasoned vet and has used something, for 10, 12, 15 years. But finding that happy middle ground is super important. But I think another thing, and you kind of touch on this about the scalability, is when we do scale, how easy is it to go in the case of if that software doesn't reach us to where or get us to the next point, how can we build our workflow to the next level? So I think it's like a hand in hand thing. It's not just about the software you're using. You also have to kind of bulletproof, and there's no such thing, right? But kind of bulletproof your workflow to migrate and scale with you as well.
Yeah, so it's the focus is on the workflow as opposed to the tool
Right.
or the software. And I think a lot of times we try to cram our workflow into what the software can do, which just it drives me effing crazy when it's almost like I remember my first job out of college, I was focused on like financial systems implementation. So like Oracle or SAP or these big systems. And basically like the one thing the client does not want to hear you do is the system wants you to do it this way. So you have to do it this way.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Like I just remember being in the most tense conversations being like, we just paid how much money for these licenses and now you're telling us we have to do it exactly this way. Why can't you make this system like fit what we're trying to do, you know? And I think for us in the beginning, we didn't really have our workflow defined. So then what happened was we would follow like the system or the process that we started out with Rike, which is a great tool. I can see like it's a very deep tool, but there's just so many customization features that if you haven't really quite defined your process yet, you don't know what to customize.
Yeah, it's like buying a car that, you know, if you live in a flat terrain, but you're buying all the 4-wheel drive and the, you know, all the crazy features that you may never use.
Yeah, and I think I've worked in a lot of project management tools, and I could see the power of what Rike could do for us, but ultimately, like for where we are today, it just wasn't the right tool for us. So, I made a decision to move us over to Trello, which is like the exact opposite.
Sure, but to your point, and you spoke about this when you were kind of presenting it to us in the company, we should move to Trello. Trello has been used by the largest companies in the world. Toyota has, used it for their process.
I think they use a similar, I don't know if they use it for
I'm sure it's
themselves,
custom,
but the same methodology.
Sure.
It's this whole Kanban style,
right?
Like moving, like there's 4 statuses.
Yep.
Is it on hold? Are you working, reviewing, or done? Right.
The old whiteboard and sticky notes.
Exactly, man. That's exactly what it was. And and I think before I interrupted you, I think what you're trying to say was we just want to simplify the way that we do it, and one thing I remember telling you guys was, can you challenge yourselves to find a simpler way to manage the projects using a system like Trello, and Kaylin, who is on the other end of the spectrum where she loves these more robust tools. I know she's had a little bit of challenge trying to find a way to make it work for her own workflow. But again, it's that whole KISS idea, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? And that's in the end, I think, at least for most businesses that are like small and medium-sized businesses, keeping it simple is generally a good idea.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in project management hell. And I just remember when I was starting to see hey, it would take us, we're spending 3 hours a week, 4 hours a week here and there, just maintaining what we were doing.
But 2 hours a week on the actual project.
Yeah, this is effing madness. You know what I mean? Why the hell are we spending all this time configuring the tool that should keep us organized? Do you know what I mean? The system should just work. And, I think the more you can simplify your project management, software system or whatever the case is, the better. Because another example is we had a project that we built in Rike, and I needed to make an adjustment to a date, but all these projects were connected to each other, and I couldn't just isolate adjusting this one date without it cascading down.
Yeah, breaking the entire pipeline.
Breaking the whole thing. So then, 2 hours later, I'm still effing around with this stupid date, right? And I'm like, okay, I just screwed myself here and that's when I was just like, you know what? This is not the tool for us right now. If I have a central project management office, like a PMO,
right,
where that's their entire effing job, which is just to
troubleshoot, yep,
keep the system maintained, make sure it's organized, make sure the data is good that's going in there. That's their whole job. Fine. but we're really far away from that right now.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I actually wanted to ask you, like, for me being with having a more of a project management background, like, I'm a little bit of a Nazi when it comes to making sure that we stay on top of our project management tasks and stuff. But you coming from a creative background, kind of a studio background, how important do you think project management is? And do you think there's a different way that you use it versus maybe like a marketing team might use it?
I think the objectives end up being the same. You need to see when things are due, when there's a review, when there's a deadline on the horizon, and figuring out a way to kind of build and keep and process all that information. So all of that is definitely important. And same with being on the creative side. We have deadlines, we have reviews, we need to put information in and out. But I do think the process of it is a little daunting for somebody that may not be used to looking at Gantt charts and Excel spreadsheets and things like that. Luckily for me, I was kind of a little bit of technical in my previous job, technical / artist. So I kind of, and I'm just kind of a nerd anyway. So I kind of, I could figure it out to make it work within my head. But yeah, even in Reich, I was getting lost and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. The program that I used at the previous studio I was working at was called Shotgun. And that's an industry standard film visual effects piece of software that is crazy. You can program inside it, so you can write different pieces of software with inside it to kind of customize it how you want. So it's very, very flexible and capable of doing all kinds of crazy different things. And Reich kind of gave me some of those fears. And from a creative standpoint, it didn't make a lot of sense as far as like, sometimes all I need to see is just when things are due, when the review is, and where I could put a note. And that's it. I don't need the in-betweens.
And you can do that in Reich, but you got to there's too many steps to be able to just break it down into something that's dumb, simple.
Exactly. But if you do, then is it screwing the rest of the team that needs to use it? So we needed to find that balance. And I think so far Trello has been really good. We did have a small stint with Bandcamp. Basecamp. Sorry, not Bandcamp. Yep. Bandcamp's the website where you can post up all your free music. With Basecamp. And that was interesting because I felt like that was kind of in a direction, but it wasn't scalable to what we needed it to be. You could see we were quickly hitting like the edge of that. That seems more of like a one-on-one or a one-person team type thing.
Yep.
I don't we didn't spend that much time in it, so I don't know how deep it really does go. But yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, so far Trello has been really good. I love the card system. Like I said, it reminds me of the whiteboard thing. Put a bunch of sticky notes on the left side. You have your right side. You have your columns where you have to fill in due dates, by the due date, and you just move things left to right. And you can go as deep as you want, or you can see it surface level.
And it's free.
Right, and it's free. And there's a ton of cool plugins for it.
Yeah,
right?
So I think the way they get you is to get more than one plugin, you have to pay to upgrade. But, the free fee, and for any agencies out there who do want to share like their project management tools with their clients, we found that our clients don't want another thing to log into and another thing to keep track of. That's why we have our weekly status meetings with them. But for any agencies that have clients that actually want to be pretty deeply involved in the project management piece, Trello's awesome because it's a free tool. It's free to add them to your board. And actually another agency owner told me that their clients like it because they can use Trello for their own personal.
Yeah, it's got the personal board.
Yeah, their own personal board so they can have their own to-dos. So yeah, project management is just one piece of all the tools that we use and stuff, right?
That's exactly where I was going next.
Yeah. So, what are, on your end, what are some other tools and things that you use?
I would say a big one, at least day to day for us, would be Slack. We super heavily rely on Slack and we do pay for that version. That is one of the most awesome app inventions in the last 10, 15 years.
It's amazing to see what they've built, the brand that they've built. I've seen, so for us, I would say we're not even using 20% of the power of Slack. Some of our clients, like for example, when it's an insurance client and when a new policy is sold, there's a public company-wide Slack channel that just tells everyone, hey, we just sold a new policy. So it's kind of like the sales leaderboard.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When a new thing gets sold, it's kind of like that company announcement. But there are so many integrations that you can build with Slack, custom integrations, out of the box integrations, all that stuff. And it's definitely, I still get way too much email, but it's definitely reduced the amount of email that we send back and forth
Right.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. My inbox now looks more like advertisement spam email or email that I've opted into versus conversational email, which I've never been a fan of scrolling through the thread and reading at the bottom. In fact, I hate when I actually don't like the Gmail interface because it reverses the order. I don't know. Maybe I'm old school.
No, that is annoying.
But right, it's so annoying when it puts the newest email at the bottom. I'm always looking at the top of the screen like, wait a minute, I've already read this.
Yeah. I bet you there's some internal battles in
I'm sure,
at Google going on about that kind of stuff.
But yeah, Slack's amazing.
And the cool thing is like with Slack, I get an email every month kind of like summarizing like how many messages we sent, and they do this cool little thing where they say like you sent 1,000 messages this month, and that's the equivalent of saving like 200 emails or something like that. So
that is cool.
They actually like have found some kind of study or have some sort of data to show like, hey, this has actually reduced the amount of email that's like cluttering your inbox. So Slack is absolutely a great tool, especially because I have freelancers. I've got
that was my next part of it.
Kind of all over the place. We can add freelancers.
The fact that you can give access in and out of the company makes it amazing. It's and you don't have to even if when you get a freelancer, you don't have to get in that weird position like, hey, can I call you? Can I text you?
Yep.
Even though it's a similar like one-on-one message with Slack, it doesn't feel as intrusive as you taking their phone number and calling them on their personal line.
Right.
They know that they're downloading Slack for a business purpose.
A little more intimate than email, less than a phone call or a text.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And they feel part of the team. It makes kind of everybody, you don't have to worry about giving them an email address. It just cuts down on a lot of extra steps that you used to have to do.
Yeah, I think as we move more and more towards this trend of people kind of teleworking or, kind of being on the, if you have your laptop and internet connection, you can pretty much do anything these days, right?
Right.
And Slack has just been an invaluable kind of communication tool. One of the challenges that we have is like, hey, where do we document things sometimes? So it's like, hey, like this conversation we're having on Slack, this should actually be a comment inside Trello.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So we have that trouble sometimes.
Sure. But the functionality and the searchability of Slack makes it kind of easy to recall those features.
Slack is, and the way they built their pricing is awesome because you can use it for free forever.
Yep.
You basically can use every single feature in Slack, almost like 80% of the features in it without paying for the premium version. You can add as many users to your channel as you want. But the big thing is like if you want to be able to search archived messages or anything like that, you have to use the paid version.
Smart.
But also, if you ever want a lesson on how to do SaaS pricing, like take a look at how Slack has built it because they obviously have a super sticky product too.
Right.
So, but yeah, Slack has been a big one. Any other tools that you kind of find invaluable or you think are useful
I would
for us?
say we'll get into the creative things in just a second, but Google Suite, that is a game changer. I don't know how else to put it, man. I mean, that's our email, that's our calendar. It's our, right now it's kind of a server for us. PowerPoint, Excel, Word, Dude, it's all gone away because of Google Suite.
$5 a user, man.
Yeah.
$5 a user. I remember back in the day when, you brought a new employee on board, you had to buy Microsoft licenses and all this stuff, and they're like a couple $100 or whatever the case is. And before, like I was in finance before, and I had just a little bit of a spreadsheet monkey, and I never thought I'd see the day where anything would overtake Excel, because you could model everything in Excel. You could do pivot tables, you can do VLOOKUPs, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff in Excel. And recently, I've seen that there's almost a 1-to-1 feature match.
Oh yeah.
for Google spreadsheets as there is to Excel now. So now, even when I'm building models and profitability models and forecasting and all that kind of stuff, it's all done inside Google spreadsheets now. And I used to have to do it. I used to like do basic spreadsheet stuff in spreadsheets in Google, and then more complicated stuff in
Oh,
Excel.
it goes deeper though. You can use the Google Developer Console to write custom scripts to
Sure, yeah,
connect the Google apps to each other. So if you're writing, and maybe it doesn't even have to be this complex, but if you're writing some formulas inside of your sheet, they'll update in your PowerPoint. So if
oh,
you have like
cool,
a graph, it'll
yeah.
update automatically live. Yeah, there's crazy customizations you can write. Basically, you can write software within the Google development environment inside of Google Suite. And kind of touching what you were saying back in the day, where you'd have to give somebody an email address, then you'd have to give them a login, and you'd have to set up their email address. It's all gone. You just send them a username, and it's all set up. I don't need to give them access to all these crazy hard drives. I don't have to give them a hard drive. They have 30 gigs of storage that comes with the plan. Like it's amazing.
As a startup company, I think the fewer dollars you have to spend on vendors up front, for example, IT, right? Before you had to set up your own, you needed a server, right? You needed someone to provision your accounts. You needed someone to take care of all these things. And now, like, your admin, can basically take care. Literally, bringing on a new user on Google is just send them that email, like you said, and they're provisioned. You're done. So for us, like, there will be a day where we need an IT team, to build out our infrastructure and technology and stuff. But right now, like, Google solves 99% of the problems that we
Yeah,
have
I mean,
when
we're
it
not paying
comes.
for power, we're not paying for storage, all these things that as a media company would have to do back in the day. And like you said, we will have to do that eventually because it's not going to be the end all be all. But yeah, and then if you run out of space, it's $1.99 to get a terabyte.
Yep.
It's yeah,
Yep.
it's insane. So I would say, yeah, Google Suite is definitely one that I could personally not live without. I depend on it on a daily basis. As far as like content building and creation and the kind of more artistic side, the Adobe Suite, man.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh,
Adobe's been on fire
yeah,
like
they're
over the
killing
past
it.
few years, not only with just like the, you know, the typical powerful apps that they have for your desktop computer or your laptop, but their mobile
Yep,
apps too are pretty nuts, right?
yep. All their mobile apps now connect directly in with your cloud account. So if you have an Adobe Pro Cloud account, or Creative Cloud account is what they call it, you can get all these apps, which are free, but all the features are unlocked. So if you start doing some photo editing on your desktop in Lightroom, you can transfer that to your phone and continue. Vice versa, if you take something, obviously we're not saying that your phone is going to replace, a 42 megapixel camera, but if you take an image on your phone and you want to touch it up in Lightroom, maybe for a mock-up, if we're out in the field or something, we can send it to the desktop, and in relatively quick time. You don't have to worry about download the image or email the image or whatever. It's all connected. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we used it the other day to scan. We used Adobe Scan, which has nothing to do with the Creative Cloud. We use that to scan in all our receipts
Oh yeah,
for the
that's right.
accountant.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
just did that, and it made one PDF in like 30 seconds. It took what used to take a ton of time to log and take pictures and whatever. Now it took 30 seconds, and it's already in our cloud server. So if we need a backup, it's already there. So the Adobe Suite, without a doubt, is something that I couldn't live without. I know Final Cut is out there, and there's a lot of Final Cut users, but the flexibility that I can jump between the apps within Adobe makes it amazing. How about you, man? Is there a specific? I know we've also been using on the project management side. We've been using Confluence a lot.
Yeah, so recently we decided to use Confluence, and for those out there who don't know Confluence, it's built by the same company that I can never pronounce their name right. Altizian. I can't say it right, but they built Jira.
Right. Okay.
They built Trello.
Yep.
Trello is also one of their softwares. But Confluence is kind of like a wiki, and I kind of see it as like building like an internal company intranets,
Yep.
right? So stuff that only people within our company can see. But one thing I realized was that, like, for example, you take meeting notes for a client and we do it in Google Docs. We store it on Google Drive. And like it just kind of
Gets buried.
archived there and buried in Google Docs. And I was trying to find a better way to have us document things like meeting notes when we have clients. Like for example, like where do we put all the most important client assets? Like we have a project brief, we have branding for the client, we have the scope of work that we define with the client, we have high level milestones and timelines, and Google Drive was just not a great place to put that because there wasn't a really clean way to organize it.
Right.
And who wants to dig around a file structure, So what Confluence allows us to do is you can build like these individual wikis or like almost web pages. Portals in a way. Yeah. So we have it's organized by spaces. That's kind of the highest level hierarchy. And so we break up our spaces into like client work, internal work, like our HR/team stuff, right? And within those, like on our client, we list all our clients, and all our clients, that's where we put everything for our clients. We try to build a Confluence page for everything. Or if there's not a Confluence page, we link to a Google Drive place on the Confluence page.
Right.
If it's not,
if it's a little bit longer than
yeah, and you can actually embed Google Drive and all that kind of stuff into Confluence as well. But also internally, there's things like that's where we document all of our policies and procedures. If we have checklists, for example, like when we have a kickoff meeting with a client, there's a standard list of things that we go over. We put those checklists inside Confluence so that we can always reference that. We duplicate that Confluence page and then we put it to the client. So for me, like it's just been trying, and I know it gets kind of tedious for our team sometimes, but I just want to make sure we document everything. And, I actually learned this from one of our clients that we're working with is, you got to have a source of truth for everything, right? Whether that's what brand assets we're allowed to use for Tobe, what decisions were made when we had a meeting with a client. We want all that stuff to be documented, and we want it to live somewhere that we can access and we can always easily go back and reference, right? And so I think we've built maybe a general structure for how we use Confluence. And I mean, ultimately, like I've assigned like the creative team, that's your Confluence pages.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I handle all the client Confluence pages and make sure that it's organized correctly. But ultimately, like I just want to build it as a source of truth for us to go to so that, we always have a place to document thoughts or ideas. And it's really cool because every Confluence page has a comments feature. So let's say like I'm at the store getting Starbucks. And
go figure.
Yeah, we were talking
check out the last episode for that one.
Loyalty programs. So I'll have a random thought waiting in line about a marketing idea or something like that. And before I'm like, shit, where do I put this thing?
I usually Slack it to myself.
Right. Well, but the thing is, like, I Slack things to myself, but I never remember to go back to check that damn Slack message again.
I use the reminder bot all the time.
So for me, I just want to put it in the place where it's supposed to live. So that when I need to do work on that thing, it's there. So what I'll do is like, I'll snap a picture of maybe that idea, or maybe there's a cool piece of copy that I saw, and then I'll find the Confluence page I want to put it in. And it's actually, the app is built really well. And then I'll just leave it as a comment on that Confluence page so that I know when I go back to update that page later to include that in whatever I'm updating. So for me, it's been a really good tool to, like I said, document ideas and thoughts, but also it's a good collaboration tool because there's things like our company goals. We set goals for our whole company, and I kind of made the conscious decision to make everybody's goals public. My goals, your goals,
accountability, man.
Yeah.
Accountability.
All of our employees, right? And as we're updating the goals and stuff, like we get notified about them. And, some people may feel a little bit uncomfortable, like having your goals kind of be out there in the public. But for me, it's all about just, like you said, having that accountability. And
we need to build a Slack bot leaderboard for that.
Totally. Yeah, totally, man. So there's another probably another cool integration you could probably build into Confluence as well. But Confluence for me I've actually been really excited to use it. And for me, it's just helped me keep me a lot more organized with all the client work that we're doing. But also you and me are working on a shitload of internal projects too, right? So like, it's just a good place. Like for example, like if we're building a landing page and an email campaign sequence for an internal campaign that we're running for Tobe Agency, right now, like every time we build a new campaign, build a Confluence page. What's the landing page copy? What's the email copy? And then we use the comments function in Confluence to kind of go back and forth
Right.
on. And a lot of people may ask, like, why don't you just do this in Google Docs? And the reason why is because in Google Docs, it gets buried
Well,
under this
yeah,
crazy folder
Google Docs
structure.
ends up just being a filing cabinet full of loose papers.
Exactly. In Confluence, like, I'm not sure what the right analogy to pull is, but it's less of a filing cabinet and
Well, it's a proper hierarchy without
Yes.
having to manually build the proper hierarchy.
yeah,
Because you can do exactly what you're talking about inside of Google Docs.
for sure.
But it's a lot of building. It's a lot of time wasted. You're going to have to build the file management system every time, build a folder, share the folder. So yeah, it just becomes really, really cumbersome to try to build that manually every time.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I've seen other companies that have really put a lot of effort and investment into Confluence, and I've seen just how, hey, they'll ask someone, hey, where's this thing? And they'll just send them a link to the Confluence page, and bam, you're done.
Yeah.
That's it. No more
Same here.
discussion, no more back and forth. I think you and I were working on a project for a client, and you're like, oh, I need the logos for the client and their brand guide. And just I send you to the top level Confluence page, and it's all there. You know what I mean? So,
I like that natively inside of the page, you can see images, you can see video, you can play video natively all inside of the Confluence page. You don't have to go to a link. So that's another thing that in a Google Doc,
it's all done in line.
Right. In a Google Doc, you'll have to click a link to get out of it, even to play like a YouTube video or whatever. So I do like that feature. But yeah, same here. We used that for one of the studios I worked with, but it was strictly for a wiki. It wasn't like project notes and stuff like that. But it was where if you were a senior level artist or higher or a manager, this is where you would go and kind of dump like company wide tutorials, things like that, where people could use, go and like learn how to, get around file structure, naming conventions, things like that. That it just takes too much time, or it's just annoying to have to keep repeating to somebody. So you just send them a link to this and it gives you everything. And that's how they use it.
And there's things like, like when you would, I almost say like in the old times, which wasn't that long ago, but when you would onboard with a company, they give you like the HR manual.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right. But now you put the HR manual in Confluence.
Right.
Just send everyone to that link, have them read it. They can comment, ask questions, things like that. Like it's such a dumb, simple tool, to be honest with you. Like there's no rocket science to it at all, but it's one of those things, kind of like the zipper. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, I need to use this.
So necessary.
Day. It's necessary, right? So yeah, there's Confluence. I think one of the other tools that, like I personally like in running in a business where our time is, very valuable, and we're measured in hours and things like that, is Toggle. So it's a time tracking tool. And as an agency, we actually don't charge by the hour. Our mission and our kind of MO is our clients pay us to complete a job. We're not on the kind of traditional model where we get paid by the hour or anything like that. We scope out the work, we find the objective, and we do it regardless if it takes 10 hours or 100 hours to do. And that's my job, or whoever the account director's job is, to make sure that we do it in 10.
Right. Jared, render faster.
Yeah, exactly. But Toggle has been a really important tool for me because it gives me a ton of different ways to slice and dice our time. So I can slice it by project. I can slice it by client. Task. I can slice it by who the people working on it, the project team that's working on it. I can slice it by billable or unbillable work, So it's been, having that visibility into, if you're in a people-based business, and I'm, for anyone that really needs to like clock in and clock out, having those kind of analytics is super important to be able to managing your margins. And ultimately, I want to say, okay, when we develop a content roadmap for a client, it takes us between 15 to 25 hours. Right. When we record this podcast, it takes us, 10 to 15 hours to record it, produce it, get it out the door, publish it, get it out the door, And that allows me, when I'm budgeting and making decisions on how to like really strategically plan for the company, it helps me figure out that is an input to me figuring out how to do that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So Toggle's the other one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they walk in the door and they think you're tracking their time, they just think you're like God view watching over their shoulder type thing. But
I'm doing that.
it's so much deeper than that. And I think you brought up some really great points, especially about the margins. You don't know how to charge. This is a huge problem in the agency world, or I would say just in client services. You always are gonna you underbid yourself or undercharge for your services. And this kind of gives you that truth of, what is it really actually taking?
Totally.
And you can build in buffers and make sure that, you have adequate amounts of people and time to finish and, to complete the projects and, and actually give a real projected timeline, not just a shot in the dark or based off of what you think somebody else did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been another pretty invaluable asset for our business. And I would say that the last kind of piece of software that I use pretty frequently, more so these days, is HubSpot.
Right.
So HubSpot is our marketing automation platform that we use. And, we as an agency, we've got to practice what we preach, right? So we do inbound digital marketing. We sell that service to our clients, and we do that for ourselves.
Yep.
We do the whole inbound digital marketing methodology for Tobe agency. We produce content, we build lead magnets, we do marketing automation, and that's all done through the HubSpot platform. I will say that it's a pricier piece of software. And basically what HubSpot does is it kind of combines everything that things like MailChimp, maybe WordPress or Squarespace, lead pages, SendGrid, all the, Hootsuite, like all those other like kind of SaaS tools that are there for digital marketing, it rolls it all up into one software. And the advantage to that is that it gives you the ability to kind of track everything in one ecosystem.
Right.
So what would happen before was when we were doing marketing campaigns, we would send emails to get people to go to our landing page. Then we would have to figure out like, okay, how many people clicked on the landing page, how many converted, and we have to piece together data from like MailChimp, the data from lead pages. And
pull a CSV file from here, a spreadsheet from there.
And then I'd have to like manually and I'm sure there's a better way to automate that, but
it's a lot of time.
I have to build manual reports, and what HubSpot does is it allows me to track everything in sort of one funnel, if you would.
Yeah.
So, that's something that I've been using a lot more and has been a really invaluable resource for us.
I was going to say, I think HubSpot, obviously it's an amazing piece of software, but I think obviously they practice what they preach with their inbound methodology. Their university, if you want to call it that, or their learning center is amazing because they're kind of an open book. Everything that they do, they kind of just hand over and tell you this is exactly, and roadmap it for you, exactly how we're doing things, what you should be doing, what's hot, what's not working.
Yep.
When Google makes a change, they're on top of it. When Facebook makes a change, they're on top of it. And they're passing all this information through. And a lot of it they actually give out for free, which is also really, part of their inbound methodology.
Yeah. In fact, they give out a free CRM tool, which is an awesome CRM. I think, hey, look, there's the Salesforces of the world, which are obviously the 800-pound gorilla. But for most people, the HubSpot CRM does what you need it to do, and it's free forever with as many contacts as you want.
Yep.
So HubSpot is a great tool, and I always say like the pro version is a little bit pricey. It's like $800 a month. So you got to have a pretty good marketing strategy in place, and you have to have a defined conversion at the end and defined.
Yeah, you got to have a reason to use it.
Yeah, exactly. But they also have a $200 a month software, which basically does everything that like lead pages, MailChimp kind of all does in one. And if you actually go and add up the cost to pay for all those things individually, it actually adds up to about $150 to $200 a month.
Yep.
So
when they $9.99 you to death.
Yeah, exactly. So they, for anyone out there who's looking for maybe an all-in-one marketing tool, check out HubSpot Basic. For some people who don't need like the crazy marketing automation or what they call smart marketing, where they deliver specific types of content to you based on your persona or whatever. It's actually a pretty robust tool, HubSpot Basic. So
yeah, we actually talked about that with Nick Saltzman a couple episodes. it's been more than a couple episodes
Yeah, a
now,
few
but yeah,
episodes
back in
ago.
the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
We'll link that up in the show notes so you guys can hear that episode where we kind of dive in there. Nick's one of the product specialists that we had on. Cool, man. Well, dude, we went super deep into the tech of Tobe Agency. I'm really glad we got a chance to talk about this. It's something that I know we both kind of want to talk about and nerd out about. This is a little bit more technical than our normal flavor episode, but definitely dropped a bunch of good knowledge. So yeah, we will leave it at that. Don't forget to subscribe to Run with Tobe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and basically anywhere else you can find a podcast. Also hit us up on any social at Run with Tobe, and we'll see you guys on the next one.